Good morning, all. Today is December 1st, 2020. The Board of Lee County Commissioners regular meeting will convene. If we could have the invocation, Pastor White Powell.
Is our pastor here? Oh, head right to the podium there.
Thank you, sir.
Let's bow our heads, please. Almighty God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together, Lord, and just be in the liberties that you so graciously have given us. Lord, we lift up the county commissioners this morning, asking God that you would give them wisdom in the decisions they have to make. We thank you, Lord, for their willingness to serve and ask that you would be a blessing to their families. God, keep them in health. Lord, help them prosper. Let everything they do today be done with great success and efficiency in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Turn to the flag, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Well, I should be right on the right.
Sure.
Far right. You feel
Unbelievably great.
Thank you all. The next item on the agenda is ceremonial presentations. Mr. Pendergrass.
Thank you. If I could have Animal Services come forward, we have a special guest in the house, and he is one big sweetheart. So if anybody wants to take home a loving dog for the holidays, he is one adorable dog. He and Roger had him in the office earlier. He just loved Roger. So you can tell, I think you have some holiday events coming up, and I was actually out at Animal Services yesterday and just did a stop by visit. And let me tell you something, if you haven't had a chance to go to Animal Services, please stop by there and just look at what a great service we provide to the community. It's of all my years of being in different shelters and different adoption places, ours is very clean and very efficient. They have a lot of cats in stock right now, so you can talk about what's going on with the holidays too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us this morning. Good morning, Commissioners. So we do have Laurent this morning with us. As Commissioner Pendergrass mentioned, he's 3 years old, an American Bulldog. He is deaf, so he can't hear very well, but he is very lovable. We do have a bunch of...
house, so.
Yeah, exactly, right? So for the holidays, we don't encourage people to come and just buy a pet or adopt a pet for somebody else, but we do have gift certificates available at the shelter, so you can come down and get a gift certificate for somebody. We also have a pet giving tree. There's a bunch of different ornaments on it. On the back, there are donated items that we're recommending to bring in for a pet at the shelter. We have a bunch that came with today, or you can come down. Our shelter is located at 5600 Banner Drive, which is right next to the Sheriff's Office headquarters, and we would love to see you. As Commissioner Pendergrass mentioned, we do have a lot of cats currently. We're at the end of the kitten season, so we still have quite a few there. But yeah, we're just grateful to be here this morning, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to highlight Laurent and his friends.
Great job by your staff yesterday. Like I said, the place is immaculate.
Hello, dog.
The employees are unbelievable. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much. We'll be sure to let them know.
Thank you, board.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
puppy?
Hopefully I get a home. Hopefully I get a home by Christmas.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Why? Likes you, Frank.
Thank you, Chairman.
Pleasure. Thank you. So next on the agenda is the recap. So I'm going to go over a couple of items on the recap sheet. Item C21, approval, purchase of maintenance and support. That's going to be deferred to the 15th meeting, December 15th. Revision and corrections on C15, the award contract for custodial services for the downtown building. There's an increase from $805,042.63 to $1,110,645.83. And then an item pulled by myself, which is C5. Those are the items as far as that's concerned.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the revisions and corrections and the items to be deferred on the recap.
Motion on the floor.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate it. We obviously then have the county manager and county attorney items. We'll deal with those in their order. But honestly, we're going to get to the consent agenda. Item number 5, I pulled for discussion purposes. And, you know, being somewhat new to the board, I had an opportunity to look at this and just thought it would be worthwhile to have a discussion. I look at this and received a lot of emails, obviously supporting staff's recommendation to move forward with this. But late in the afternoon, it was brought to my attention that in doing what we're going to do might potentially not afford the people that have the actual home in the historical district to receive the maximum amount of credits, the maximum opportunities from FEMA, and having those opportunities. And what I wanted to do, at least to have a discussion, to understand that just on the surface, when you talk about a national historical preservation area, it seemed different to actually not support that. So I was just curious on the conversations that I understood what staff did. They did a great job writing it up. But what I don't want to do is not have an opportunity to have a discussion, rather be thorough, rather double check everything and have that conversation to make sure if there's an opportunity that we might pass by for the people that actually own a home in that district. I know there's some other pieces to this, and looking at the meeting, looking at staff's comments, obviously Gilchrist Avenue and the medium becomes another issue, but I'm looking really for the homes and want to make sure we have an opportunity not to potentially give them every opportunity to receive the maximum credits and reimbursement from FEMA. That's why I pulled it for discussion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I just ask staff or somebody to just, in 25 words or less, tell me what the proposal would accomplish as before us today for an up or down vote? If we had passed it on a consent agenda, what would we have done?
Mr. Chair, do you want to do the rest of the consent agenda item and then come back to this conversation?
That'd be great.
Okay.
We'll deal with the rest of the items. Any commissioners want to pull any items on the consent
I
agenda?
have none.
I have none.
None.
Okay.
I move the balance.
Second it.
A motion to move the balance, second by Commissioner Hammond. Any other discussion?
Public comment.
Any public comment? Thank you. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Item number 5, back on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Commissioner Mann's question, Richard, do you want to cover this, or shall I have Mr. Loveland come to the podium?
Mr. Chairman, if the board is looking for a substantive discussion, then perhaps Mr. Loveland is the appropriate individual. If we're talking about procedure and the item that is currently on the agenda, our office would be happy to flesh that out for the board and the members of the public.
Okay, we're beyond the 25 words or less.
So let's have the director come on up, and if we need to come back with you, Richard, we'll do that.
Thank
How's
you,
that?
sir.
Dave?
Thank you.
This has to do with historic preservation. I think I got that. It's a federal move we're supporting or being asked to. Just simplify it for me, please, Mr. Loveland.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. Dave Loveland, Community Development. The request that's in front of you is an application that was submitted actually to the state to designate a portion of Boca Grande as a nomination to the National Register of Historic Places.
By whom?
Submitted by a consultant. It's not clear who they're representing, other than the property owners within that area that's identified to be submitted.
Okay, well, that's a little mystifying.
Well, that's.
As we go through the discussion, Mr. Chairman, and I am yielding to you for your suggestions, to your district and all, and as a habit, I have tried always to look to the district commissioner for their suggestions or what direction they'd like to take on something like this. And I didn't, when I was reading my notes, I didn't see this as controversial. Now, to me, in a way that makes it controversial when it's not real clear how it got to this point. So I'm going to be, for whoever's going to comment later, that would help. Now tell me what it would do if we passed it.
Okay, the process, just procedurally real quick, what happens is the state administers this nomination request, the Historic Office for the State and the Department of State. They're looking for support from the local Historic Preservation Board, which the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board already considered this and recommended against it. And they're looking for support from the chief elected official of the local jurisdiction, which would be the chairman of the commission. So that's why it's in front of the board today, to see whether you support it. What was included in in the package, besides the recommendation from the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board, was some concerns by staff that the original submittal was amended and included Gilchrist Avenue, and there's some concerns about what a historic designation for a roadway and our ability to do normal maintenance and whatever on the roadway is a concern. Some correspondence that came from the group that went through Commissioner Wayne's office is indicating that, you know, they want to see it not only because they view it as a gold standard if you're on the National Register. And I want to make clear, all of this property that's being proposed is already designated as a historic district under the county's local designations. So it's all within a locally designated historic district. And the contributing structures within there are eligible or are exempt from the FEMA 50% build-back rules. Those are rules that say if your property is damaged or destroyed, if the value of the repairs is more than 50% of the cost of the property, you're supposed to bring it up to current flood standards. Historic properties are exempt from that, the contributing structures within the historic district. That already applies, even though there's some reference to some FEMA benefits as part of this application. The reference to some FEMA funding that Commissioner Wayne referenced, I'm not aware of any special pot of FEMA funding for historic properties. I mean, if there was, God forbid, a storm that affected Boca Grande, obviously FEMA would come in and have to address all of the properties that might be affected there. So the concern is, can this be supported wholly the way the application is submitted? Again, the biggest concern from a staff perspective is our ability to do our normal job related to Gilchrist Avenue. The National Register designation doesn't add any particular regulations to go with it. It's considered more of an honorific type of designation. It doesn't add any additional requirements beyond what our local designation already does.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question then.
Sure.
So if the, help me understand, because I was trying to follow along here. You said the application was submitted and then it was amended to include Gilchrist. And then, so let me ask this, if the amendment was dropped and it was brought back to just the homes, so the median and the roads weren't included, how would you all have evaluated this? How would you feel about it?
From a community development and DOT staff perspective, we wouldn't have a concern with the designation for just the residential properties.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up question, if I may. In reviewing the minutes, and I certainly had an opportunity to get briefs yesterday, there was a suggestion to actually remove that as an alternative, and that was denied, correct?
For the minutes for the Historic Preservation
Correct.
Board? Right. They viewed it as kind of an all-or-nothing deal, I believe.
But that was a suggestion that we certainly had on the table as an alternative.
Right. It's not clear whether I think I've been told the state has the ability to modify the application and potentially take a piece of it out, but that's not 100% clear. So that's a question for the board to consider. Do you want to support part of it and not all of it, or treat it as an all-or-nothing deal and have them just come back with a new application without Gilchrist Avenue in it, if it comes to that?
Mr. Chairman, if I might interject, I think part of the difficulty in this entire process comes from the fact that, unlike many of your regulations, the agreement of the property owner is not necessary for the application to be filed with the state. That lack of requirement pertains to both the residential properties and, in this case, Gilchrist Avenue, which the board is the owner of. So in this context, the application had already been filed, which included properties that are under the board's control without the board having input on the front end. And I think that's a large part of staff's concern, certainly in our office, is the lack of upfront transparency in the process. The first notification that we received as a county was when I believe you, then Chairman Hammond, received a notification from the state that also went to one of our planners in Mr. Loveland's office, that the Board of County Commissioners had 60 days within which to respond. That did not even afford us the necessary time from the staff perspective to evaluate the application. There was a concern as to whether it could get heard before the Historical Preservation Board within that time frame. And we did apply for an extension and was granted an extension by the state so that we could have adequate time to get it in front of the Historical Preservation Board, which, as you've indicated, Mr. Chairman, ultimately denied the request. I believe it was a 4-2 vote recommending approval, which was consistent with your own staff's recommendation.
Chairman?
Yes.
So, Dave, just to go back just for total transparency, Richard brought this up. So the local Boca Grande Historical Preservation Board voted against the recommendations, correct? Yes, sir. And so they had public comment from the residents there that's affected by these, of the 92 homes and everything?
Yes, the meeting was open and people had an opportunity to comment during that process.
Just curious, because Boca Grande is a jewel of Lee County. I mean, it's a beautiful area. It's the ultimate place to live in the world. I want to make sure the residents that live there that's affected by this are been notified and are totally aware of what's going on, because it's going to affect their future living there as far as cost of living and taxes and everything. So that's why I was asking to make sure there was, because I've heard from some residents they weren't notified of it, and so that's the concern I have. Like Richard said, the transparency part of it, how that occurred.
And that was part of the staff level concerns about the transparency, was whether all the property owners had been properly notified in advance when we got the initial notice, and why additional time was needed.
So, yesterday, really, this happened late in the afternoon, and certainly what I wanted to do was have a discussion. What I didn't know and have clarity on was some of the issues associated with this. I didn't want to deny anyone an opportunity for the maximum benefit. There seems to be some inconsistencies with actually having this National Historical Preservation designation gives you that ability, and what I've heard from staff is that doesn't. It's already included. So the gold standard aspect that was brought to my attention is one that, is one I wanted to preserve if that's what we needed to do. And that was the reason for doing that. It was also late in the day that I had received just a few emails, and one from Attorney Hartzell, kind of just identifying some of the issues. And that's why I thought we'd pull it, have a discussion, because what I didn't want to do is have unintended consequences and find an opportunity where we look back and said, we might have been able to do that. I think the other opportunity here is if we were to go along with staff's recommendation and approve this, there's nothing to prevent any type of adjustment, modification, or even a new application, as I was going through my briefing, to try to include or exclude some issues that are there. The issue with Gilchrist Avenue seems to be, having talked to people that are for and against it, seems to be one of the issues that are in, and I believe that's the main reason we're in this conversation as the county, because it's in that part of this designation, and that was included. I think some of the emails we received also indicated about the transparency issue, and since it was put together after season, many homeowners that were there didn't have an opportunity to attend. The ability to get on a Skype or some type of Zoom call didn't seem like it existed. So I didn't want to necessarily just pass this on a consent agenda item without having a discussion amongst us. Yes, it's my district. Yes, I'm relatively new to it. I wasn't here for some of the historical background, but did my best to make sure I understood all the issues associated with this. And like I said earlier, I didn't want to have anything as an unintended consequence as a result of denying this and then finding out later on. Staff did a great job of clarifying that for me, that indicating that they already have that designation and they don't need this additional codification from us. That fair? So that's the reason I pulled the item, just for some discussion. That was my sole purpose. Okay,
so can I ask, as the district commissioner, what would be your preference, that we go ahead and move forward with the staff recommendation here, or amend it? Because at this point, we're going to need to take public comment.
Absolutely.
And that kind of stuff.
I thought let's have some public comment.
Okay.
We'll have a little bit more of a discussion amongst us and go in the direction we can. I have 4 cards for public comment. Gloria Saggio.
You don't look like Gloria, Mr. Chairman.
That's funny.
Thank you, sir.
This one
Thank you.
does.
Hi, Gloria Sega for the record with the Planet Day LLC representing the Gasper Land. Some of you might remember me. I used to manage the county's historic preservation program before I retired in 2016. And I'm here to speak in support of item 5, which is opposition of the Boca Grande Residential Historic District. And I'd just like to go over 3 quick items. One is lack of public participation, which you have talked about. This is not a community-initiated nomination. It's a privately initiated nomination. There's been very little public discussion about this. When we did the downtown Boca Grande Historic District and I worked with the county, we had 3 public meetings in Boca Grande that were noticed to the property owners, plus 1 in Fort Myers. The community was just not notified, and Lee County, like many of the other property owners, didn't even know that its property, Gilchrist Avenue, was part of this nomination. The community members of Boca Grande had to demand public input, and that's how the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board even got to hear this item, and they voted 4 to 2 against it. There, like you said, there's a lack of transparency. It's called the Boca Grande Residential District, but there are residences, and there's Gilchrist Avenue, which is the backbone of the nomination. And that's why the nomination can't really be rewritten to just include the residences. It would have to be a new nomination, which the residences would qualify for, but it wouldn't be this one, from what the state told me. When this nomination was first made public, Gilchrist was not even mentioned. There was a public space and plaza, and we had to bring this to the state's attention. And that's when a new nomination was reissued and noted Gilchrist Median was being nominated, not a public space or a plaza. In addition, when we think of a median, we think of a grassy patch with 2 streets on either side. That's not what the Gilchrist median is. The Gilchrist median is the grassy patch, the 2 streets on both sides of it, plus the landscaping of the median. And that's not set forth in the nomination. The only reason I know that is because I talked to the state staff. Finally, there was a lack of coordination. DCD director and the DOT director both expressed concern about this nomination. And Assistant Attorney John Fredima wrote a memo, and he reminded us that back in '78, the commissioners designated McGregor Boulevard as historic and scenic in a way that did not limit the county's ability to protect and maintain public health and welfare. And so that might be something that we might want to consider as an alternative. And DOT has done a great job maintaining the median, so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Next person, Mary O'Bannon. Okay, great.
Good morning. I didn't expect to be here again after our final meeting in 2016 regarding Gilchrist Avenue. I don't know what your decision today will be, but this road has been debated and discussed, not only with the Board of County Commissioners, the county attorney, the state of Florida, the local historic preservation board, and the community in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 18, not 18, but 19, and now 20. Every attempt to create a special designation for this road has failed, and that is because year after year, the majority of residents in Boca Grande say, no, we don't want this avenue to be designated. It's a road. In 2016, you gifted our community with the renourishment of palm trees, grass, and irrigation. And the median is beautiful. It's never looked better. 4 years later, it's just lovely, so we thank you for that. Gilchrist does not need protecting. It's not in danger, and it's respected by basically the community as a whole. Should you decide not to vote today, but to send it back to the local board, I would ask that Gilchrist be removed. The neighborhood can stand on its own, and it's up to 100-plus homeowners to make that decision on whether or not they want to be in a historic designated neighborhood. However, this should be a neighborhood and community initiative. Why would it be any other way? Why would not it start with the community and the neighborhood? Why would it be something that was presented by one person who we don't know who they are representing? Due to COVID, the normal patterns of the local residents have been altered, and I would ask that if you are going to send it back, that you at least give the community until April to be properly notified, educated, and then take it back to our local board. But after almost 10 years of debate, I just kind of wonder what the next angle will be. Frankly, this is exhausting, and the community has spoken emphatically and overwhelmingly, time and time again. The majority of our community, including the 3 churches, have stood there for over 100 years and are pleased and appreciative of the enhancements that you have made on Gilchrist Avenue. But they don't want it included in the historic designation application. Today, I respectfully ask that you listen to the majority of these voices and vote no. If there is a groundswell of support for an initiative like this, it should come from the homeowners of Boca Grande in that area. It should not come from any of us that live outside of that district. It's not our business. And also, if an individual would like to have their home on the historic designation, they're free to do so. So today I would ask you to vote no, and if there is interest by the majority, let it come from Boca Grande and from the Boca Grande residents. Thank you.
Could I simply ask you?
Yes, sir.
Whose hat are you wearing today? I missed it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm representing the Gasparilla Inn and 2 of the churches, the Baptist Church and St. Andrew's Episcopal. Yes, sir.
Next person is Janet Murphy.
Hello, my name is Janet Murphy, and I'm an architectural historian and historic preservation consultant for the town of Palm Beach. I'm here representing the Gasparilla Inn as a trained outsider to evaluate the accuracy and authenticity of the proposed Boca Grande Historic District proposal. Historic districts largely start out as grassroots efforts with neighborhood residents and town officials working together to promote a designation. In this case, a non-resident took it upon herself to write a report presented to the Lee County Historic Preservation Board asking for a vote of approval with no grassroots efforts, no contact to property owners, and no notice to the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board. Boca Grande residents and board members were rightly suspicious of a designation report trying to get passed without their knowledge. Residential historic districts focus on the architecture and the residents who live there, along with community development. This report is so focused on its agenda to have Gilchrist Avenue designated a significant historic site that it leaves out essential information that would make it legitimate. The character of this district is mostly derived from the craftsman and frame vernacular buildings that make up over 75% of this proposed district. But this is neglected along with the number of early residents who are important to Boca Grande who should be noted. There were flaws throughout, including suspect dates of resources, including the Gilchrist Avenue median, which is dated to 1897, though the street was not laid out until 1908 and the median likely later. The Olmsted influence touted throughout, along with the inspiration of the City Beautiful movement, was completely discredited, clearly challenging the eligibility of this report. This designation is based on meeting criteria A, B, and C of the National Register of Historic Places, and I explained at the Boca Grande Board why the report failed to meet the National Register criteria and therefore should not be determined eligible. The Lee County Attorney asked that Gilchrist Avenue not be considered as part of the designation. However, property owners, including Lee County, cannot opt out of a historic district, and the report is so focused on the significance of Gilchrist Avenue, it simply cannot be evaluated separately. This report needs to be evaluated as written because this is a report voted on today that would go forward to the state and to the National Register for designation. A new nomination report would need to be written to exclude Gilchrist Avenue. Proponents of this nomination have been deliberately misleading on the benefits of the National Register designation, especially the FEMA 50% rule and the Stafford Act. They know that this benefit is already afforded to properties in this district, as they are all located in the Boca Grande local district where this benefit currently exists. This National Register nomination simply does not add benefits. I truly believe there is a legitimate National Register Boca Grande residential district, but it is not this nomination. Lee County attorneys have currently and in the past, through Assistant County Attorney John Friedman's memorandum, strongly recommended against voting for this designation that includes Gilchrist Avenue as a historically significant resource.
Ma'am, your 3 minutes are up. Please wrap up.
Yes. This, along with a flawed report and a district not embraced by the owners of the Boca Grande Board, should guide your vote of no to promoting this proposed district to National Register status. Thank you so much.
Vicki Hardick. Vicki Hardick. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mickey Hardick. I'm the Principal of Historical and Architectural Research Services. I've been doing historic preservation and National Register nominations, individual and district, for over 32 years in Florida, including in Lee County. I'd like to start off with saying that there is some misinformation that's been guided to you as far as the notification process. A letter went out from Mr. Rodriguez's office. A letter went out from the state. I sent a letter to all of the property owners. So they did get notified. Plus, there was a webinar, and it was posted in the newspaper, the date and the time of the webinar. I give you some background as to why I did this. In 2010, I was contacted by the Gasparilla Inn about placing them and not doing the nomination work to list their property, the entire site, on the National Register of Historic Places, which I did. And also in resulting from that, they reaped tremendous tax credit, historic tax credit benefits. Additionally, after that, I was hired by Lee County to do the downtown, Boca Grande Downtown Historic District. Since that time, I've done work on 3 different individual properties in Boca Grande. I've been going back and forth to Boca Grande personally for 20 years, and over the last 10 years have done considerable historic preservation work in that community. At the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board meeting, I was quite, the vote was 4-2. One member was not present, but he sent a strong letter of support that was read at that meeting. Additionally, I was quite bewildered by the fact that the Gasparilla Inn, which is not even in this district, had 3 outside paid representatives to work and object to this. At that meeting, there was 1 email of objection. 3 people spoke in support. And then as far as local or residential participation, I walked these streets and did survey and individual inspections of all of that. I made at least 8-10 trips to Boca on this project over a period of almost 2 years. I spoke to many residents who knew what I was doing and supported what I was doing. I did not hear from anyone that they did not want this, because they understood, and I made clear to them, and the state's notice and my notice made quite clear that it did not interfere with the disposition of any property up to and including demolition. As far as the nomination being changed, originally there was a map done that showed Gilchrist Avenue as we have contributing, which are historic, and non-contributing, which are not. Indicated in color that it was not a historic resource, and that was a mistake made by the state. But as I said, of all those letters that went out and all the time periods that's gone by, we have not heard any objections more than that email and the Gasparilla Inn representatives, which I'm just perplexed as to why. There was one party here, I'm sorry, and the Baptist Church was also nominated. And in closing, I want to mention, we'd be more than willing to take Gilchrist out as a historic resource and no longer label it as a contributing resource. And lastly, before February, which is when this nomination is scheduled to be heard before the National Register Review Board, there will be another letter sent out to all of the property owners asking whether they support or object to this. I ask that you please let the residents themselves make the decision and let that notice go out and see where it falls and let it go from there. Thank you.
Ken Sneeden.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ken Sneeden, and I'm speaking today on behalf of a number of the residents who actually do live in the historic district that we're considering here this morning. And I'm, first of all, grateful that all of you have expressed concern that you want to hear from those residents. So here's some of the first words that are coming from them. And, of course, as we've all talked about here today, it's important to note that what this nomination is primarily about is about the residential historic district. But, of course, as we all know, it also includes Gilchrist Avenue for whatever reasons. It includes Gilchrist, the street, the median, the landscaping. Just to be clear, the residents that I'm representing here today favor the National Register nomination, both because it is the gold standard for historic preservation, as has been mentioned here this morning, and there is the potential, even if not the certainty, of certain federal disaster relief funding. However, because county staff and others have raised the concerns about the inclusion of the Gilchrist median, we would also support removal of the Gilchrist Avenue from this nomination so that the residential portion that we feel is so important can move forward. Now, I'll get to that in just a moment, but first of all, some of the statements that have been made here. The residents that I represent feel like the processes and procedures were properly carried out. They received notifications. They were invited to the informational webinar. And of course, they were working with Mickey Hartig, the person you just heard, who was the person who prepared the nomination process for the Gasparilla Inn and the historic downtown district, both of which were implemented and approved successfully. The Boca Grande residential district that we're talking about here this morning was really just the next logical step in that progression in commercial district, residential district. Our second point of clarity regards the regulation. The nomination was supported by the residents because they read in the nomination that there would not be any additional regulation, federal or state, imposed because of this nomination, and they felt that the nomination did not limit or in any way, overregulate Lee County's use of the or regulation of the Gilchrist Avenue median. But again, since the inclusion of Gilchrist Avenue is a concern for Lee County and its staff, we would support a nomination that just includes the residential portion of the application, as Ms. Hartig just explained. We believe you could do this. Now, we're not sure because we're not lawyers, but we believe you could do this by asking the state simply to remove that portion based on what Ms. Hartig and other historic specialists say is the way to remove it. I don't know all the ins and outs of that. So in closing, the residential historic district being considered for nomination today, we believe is just as significant a part of Boca Grande's charm, heritage, and culture as the Gasparilla Inn and the downtown commercial district. Excluding the historic residences from Boca Grande's preservation efforts just doesn't make any sense. It's just a part of the ongoing process of historic preservation in Boca Grande. So we ask that you please support the residents who are in favor of their homes being included in an historic residential district nomination, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Jerry Edgerton.
Good morning and thank you. I'm Jerry Edgerton. I'm chairman of the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board. Out of the blue, in early October, we got notification that this application had been filed. Thanks to the good work by the Lee County staff, they notified us as to what was going, subsequently asked us to put it on the agenda for consideration. We did that on November 10th, and I presided over that meeting. As a result of that hearing, we determined and listened to input from all sides. We determined that the process was flawed and somewhat arbitrary, that it did not consider the impact on the affected citizens who were not represented, there was historical disagreement, okay, as to the historic significance of the Gilchrist media. There was no reference to the historical significance of the homeowners and homes involved in this. As a result of that, we voted to deny the request and ask that you do so also, okay, because we think the vote that was taken reflects the consensus of the community. We certainly believe that there's an opportunity for the individual who would like to have their homes included in the National Registry. Proceed with that. Do it on your own, but don't make a decision for people who are not affected by this, okay? I also believe that the process that we have works. We work very well with the County Planning Board. We've had disagreements, but we've successfully navigated that process, and I'd like to compliment the county staff for their professionalism. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Bruce Strayhorn. And that's the last card on this item.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Senator Mann, I'm representing the Gasparilla Inn on this one.
Thank you for.
Let me read one short sentence from learned counsel John Fradima. Incidentally, I believe Mr. Fradima should have a plaque on Gilchrist for all the work the county attorney's office has done on Gilchrist. Designation as a historic resource creates an inappropriate restriction on the county's ability to remain unfettered in its ability to maintain and operate a public road in a manner that advances public safety for vehicles and pedestrians. Now, gentlemen, I'm reminded of a comment that the sage from Alva once said.
Jim English.
Some of my friends are for it, and some of my friends are against it. And, Senator, I'm for my friends. So you're presented with two factions. No one has ever indicated, and thank goodness the chairman of the Boca Grande Historic Preservation suggested it, anyone wants to be on the historic register, go for it, do it. As one of the members at that meeting said, because someone said, this will increase the value of your house if you're on the historic register, and certainly the value of your house will be reflected in your taxes. To paraphrase one of those members, please don't do me any more favors. If my taxes are going to increase, let me do it and let me apply. Don't bring me in automatically. I think in this one it's rather simple. You've heard this was crafted with Gilchrist. Now there's an attempt after ordering a certain car to say, oh, by the way, I want to make it into another one. I think the staff's recommendation is superb in that let's follow Boca Grande's Historic Preservation Board, let's deny it, and if someone wants to come back with individual nominations, so be it. But let's don't make everybody ride in the car that at this point includes Gilchrist. There's some serious concern, I think you heard from some of the consultants, whether you can effectively take something that's crafted, already set in stone, and then say, oh, by the way, we want to change it. To quote the sage one more time, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Do it correctly from the inception to include what should be done. And with that, those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other public comment for item number 5? I've read all the cards that I have. Anyone else would like to speak? All right, we'll close public comment.
Mr. Chairman, let me share with you all the analogy I kind of thought of. A lot of times we'll have, we see this more on Wednesdays during zoning cases where we'll have somebody make a proposal that's got some controversial elements in it. And in the past, one of the things we've done is we've said, if you remove one or two of these controversial elements, we'll send you back to the hearing examiner to have it re-looked at and then bring us back a new recommendation on what we should do going forward. I kind of think we could look at the same idea here. It sounds like the residents are willing to remove the controversial elements, the Gilchrist median and the Gilchrist roadway there. And so my thought is, if they're willing to remove that from the application, could we send it back to the Boca Grande Historic Board for another opportunity to have the public come in and comment and talk about it, voice their concerns about whether they want to be included in the district or not, and then have them vote and give us a recommendation, and then bring it back to us to see what to do with it. So that would be my motion, would be basically to remand it back to the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board with the ask that the controversial elements, the Gilchrist elements, be removed from the application.
I have a question. So I have a question, I guess, for the county attorney on that. So would that require the applicant to do a whole new application, or would they be able to carve out what they want to do? Is like Commissioner Hammond's motion was.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Two thoughts on that. One procedural, if I may, first. The board is under a timeline of, I believe it's December 19th, which is 60 days from when we received notice from the state, within which to respond either favorably or unfavorably to the application as presented. So with due respect to Commissioner Hammond's motion, that would also require us to make part of that motion a request of the state to continue their process unless and until they hear further from the Board of County Commissioners. I would respectfully request that part of that component include an element that if for some reason the state does not hear back from the board within the 60-day time frame, that the state is to presume the board denied the request. The reason for that is the inverse would work against the county and its concerned residents, in that no statement from this board would be deemed approval by the state.
On that same question, then, could the motion include language that would direct the county to notify the state within the 60 days our position with Gilchrist and the median? That would not be included in future historical designations?
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, if that were part of the motion, the letter could so be drafted.
So they would have notification from the county within the 60 days of our position regarding the county property, the county road and median then?
Yes, sir, and that would be part of our request should this motion go forward, that one, the staff be directed to prepare for the chairman's signature a letter to the state requesting a minimum of 60 days continuance once again, and two, that should the state not hear from the board within that 60-day period, the state deem the board's action as denial. That deals with the Gilchrist question, how the state would deal with a bifurcated application, given that they were already in possession of the application that's in front of you, which includes Gilchrist. I cannot comment whether they would accept Gilchrist being exempted out or they would direct the entire matter be reheard. One additional thought, you did hear from several speakers a concern about public participation given this time of year. The holidays are coming up, obviously, so the 60-day time period would include those holidays, and there's some concern there as well. Just a friendly reminder, one of the speakers suggested, I believe, March or April for the process. But again, we're at the board's disposal.
So, Commissioner, you had asked what was my thoughts or intent. So my intent was, talking with both Richard and Roger yesterday, was to ask for an extension to allow the opportunity to have the board go back and modify the application to remove Gilchrist Avenue out and go through that process, because that seems to be, in everyone's conversation, to be the issue. And that's really why we're at the table, Gilchrist Avenue being it. So afford the opportunity for an extension, kick it back, and obviously with the understanding they're going to remove Gilchrist, because everybody said they would. But I think what the county attorney is indicating to us is if there's silence and there's truly not the passion that I witnessed yesterday at 1:30 in the afternoon, then we'll actually go forward with the recommendation for opposing it. You know, the people that really want to do the necessary change and modification, we'll give them the opportunity. That's what I think we're able to do. What I didn't want to do is have unintended consequences. I didn't want to necessarily, pass this opposition and find out later we did some injury to the people that actually owned homes in that area. Gilchrist Avenue and all the emails that I received seem to be the controversial issue. Listening to the public today, that's the issue. My recommendation would be direct staff. And again, I can't make a motion, but my recommendation, talking to them, direct staff to do an extension. Afford them the opportunity to make the modification. And if there's not enough urgency to it, then let it move forward with exactly as it's on our agenda right now.
If I could, just a question to the county attorney. So regarding the chairman's comments is now about the application, it would be the applicant that would resubmit to the Boca Grande Historical Preservation, because it's not the board itself receiving it and making the changes. So wouldn't that be the applicant that have to make the changes in that?
Yes, absolutely.
And so the board is the receiver of that application, and then it would go back to, so would the state still be looking at the original application that's before us today, or would they be looking at the new application that we have not seen yet?
Mr. Chairman, my thought on the issue was that the board's motion would be basically to direct the application to be sent back to be reworked by the applicant and the involved property owners, which would include the county. That, whether it's a revised application or a new application with Gilchrist Avenue removed, because I think everybody's heard the board's intent here, would then be presented to your Historical Resources Board at a duly noticed public hearing for airing, and following that public hearing taking place, be brought back before you all for final consideration.
Is that what you said?
That'd be a,
Yes, sir, that's what I said.
that'd be a winner motion right there.
That's really what I was hoping to go to.
Please don't ask me to restate that.
And I apologize for pulling this as late as it is, but there seemed to be some urgency yesterday, and I thought this would make some sense to have some discussion. So I concur with the county attorney, and we went over this actual procedure yesterday.
Okay. So that is my motion as stated by the county attorney. which basically, let's sum it back up again just real quickly. I know I wish we could go to the instant replays, but yeah, the motion is
Ask for an extension.
ask for the extension, 60 days.
We believe that would be appropriate. That has been the timeline the state has been affording us throughout this process.
Okay, ask for the extension, remand it back to the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board, work with the parties included to remove the Gilchrist Avenue elements.
Direct the applicant to revise the application as needed to meet that goal.
Okay. And then hold that public hearing, that duly noticed public hearing in front of the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board?
Yes, sir. And then bring the matter back before this board for final determination.
Great.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
One final point of clarity from the county attorney. It will be the applicant who will request the extension from the state.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir. It would be the request for the extension would come from the state, or from the county to the state. My apologies, because you are the decision-making body. One additional thought that was left out, and I apologize for this, is that should this process not take place within the 60 days, that the board's action would be a denial of the application as submitted, and staff would be directed to so advise the state.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that being in the motion as well, but the full 60 days would.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Motion on the floor?
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
I just want to make a comment. Somebody asked me over the Thanksgiving holiday what some of the challenges are, and I said certainly when neighbors oppose each other for whatever reasons, trying to get in the middle of that is always a concern. And so the issue here is, I think, buying time, for the neighbors to collectively address that, and then to be able to take the Gilchrist thing out, which I think is an issue, is the right move. So I would concur.
Okay, motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate the help with everyone. Next item is we're going on to the administrative agenda, county lands. Item number one, I do have a speaker to talk about that, but county attorney, could you Manager, can you walk us through this, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Let me get resituated here. Okay. Commissioners, item number 1 on the administrative agenda, we are requesting the approved donation of surplus vacant lands to Affordable Housing Ownership Foundation, Inc., and would ask Mr. Clemens to come to the podium to present the item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Clemens, County Lands. This item is a request for the board to donate 3 properties to the Affordable Housing Ownership Foundation, and this is an approved organization for the for building affordable housing and providing a benefit to the community. These 3 lots, one of them is in the Palmona Park area in North Fort Myers. The other 2 are in Lehigh Acres. These 3 lots are sheeted to the county. That is, they defaulted to the county for non-payment of taxes. Staff is recommending to go forward with the donation.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the item.
A motion? I have a second. I do have public comment. I have a Deborah Hopkins.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to give you a brief outline of the presentation that I actually gave to the City Council a couple of weeks ago, and they had a lot of interest in it. While you are considering the donation of land for affordable housing, I would also like you to consider our homelessness issue in Lee County. I understand that you have an additional 93 lots at your that you will be able to approve for distribution at some point. And I'd like to provide you with a report from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health talking about a new and innovative way to use those lots to provide housing for the homeless, and that is a tiny home village. Tiny homes are a very, very cost-efficient way to house the homeless. Tiny homes can, or shelters can be built for about $2,000 to $6,000 a piece. There are a number of very successful tiny home villages across the United States, and I will email you all of the links of the profession of the successful cities where this has been implemented to date. Both public and private funds have been used to tackle homelessness with soup kitchens, emergency shelters, and transitional housing. But meanwhile, the new data proves that these measures are insufficient. We have these strategies available in the county, but they are not meeting the needs of the homeless, and I can attest to that by being out on the streets with the homeless. One chronically homeless person costs taxpayers $35,000 a year through hospitalizations, use of emergency services in jails. The amount is halved when they are placed in supportive housing. This is a very innovative and cost-effective means to addressing homelessness in our county. The Low Housing Institute tiny home villages opened in several areas throughout Seattle in 2015. The tiny shelters were at that time considered emergency units for individuals and families experiencing homelessness, but these villages serve as both crisis response to homelessness and also an incentive for, if you know anything about housing first principles, to bring housing to the homeless in order to incentivize them to become more productive members of our services. While providing housing first and then providing social services around other issues that the homeless face, you are providing a great incentive. So I would urge you to please consider the use of these many lots that you have at your disposal and at least talk about this.
What organization do you represent, ma'am?
Oh, Housing First.
Okay, so you're not the Affordable Homeownership Foundation, Inc.?
No,
Off the agenda item.
no. No, I was talking about this because the affordable housing people are getting 3 lots, and you have a lot more at your disposal. Okay?
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I will provide you with a copy of this report.
Thank you.
Do I just give it to the clerk?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Any other discussion? A motion and a second on the floor. Any opposition? Motion carries. Item number 2, County Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2, we are requesting that you approve policies related to Alico Corridor Extension and Colonial Boulevard alternatives. Please recall 2 weeks ago we workshopped with you in the afternoon, and this agenda report and your vote will codify the direction that you gave us during that meeting. On the Alico Road conversation, there are 3 elements. Number 1, we will design the Alico Corridor extension to State Road 82 without performing the PD&E study, with the understanding that all the environmental requirements will be met during the design and construction phases. But that's going to help accelerate the timing of the project. We'll also consider and review incentives for the contractor to move to get the project completed earlier, and then we'll evaluate at the same time widening Sunshine Boulevard roadway for some time in the future so that that finishes the connections directly to State Road 82. The second conversation was the Colonial and Summerlin intersection. The first work to be done will be safety improvements at Colonial and McGregor, including sidewalk connection. The second element is intersection improvements at Colonial and Summerlin with 3 left turns going from north to west over the Cape Coral, over the Midpoint Bridge. We'll then plan and construct a flyover heading north and west from Summerlin, off Summerlin to Colonial Boulevard to the Midpoint Bridge. And then additionally, we'll explore adding the 3rd lane to the west and east spans of both the Midpoint and Cape Coral bridges. And you asked us to also evaluate the timing and phasing of the projects to make most efficient use of timing and funding.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman. That's what we talked about at the workshop.
Second. Correct. Motion is second on the floor. Any other discussion?
Just one question.
Sure.
On the PD&E Colonial, we will not go through the normal procedures there, but we're going to accomplish the same thing. Just put on the record, make me
Yes, sir. The PD&E as it relates to the Alico Corridor extension, we would not perform the standard PD&E study, but we will comply with all of the environmental requirements based on permitting.
In other words, though, it'll be in-house compliance and review, or
Yes, sir.
review and compliance, as opposed to normally we would contract with somebody for this?
We may contract for some help with it, and we will conduct all the normal studies that are conducted during PD&E. They're just elements of it that go beyond the environmental studies that will help us shorten the time period. Good.
No one need be concerned about this change in the normal process. The same concerns will be responded to.
Yes, sir. They absolutely will be.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
In the discussions we've had, my understanding is that this helps move this along quicker.
Yes.
So there's a time element about it. I'll go back to the chairman's comment on another issue we had is this. I want to make sure there's no unintended consequences of taking this in-house. I have every confidence in the team. I just want to make sure that in the process of expediency, we don't leave open something up that will cause a delay further down the line. So if you're confident in it, I just want to make sure that.
We assure you that based on the plan, there would be no unintended consequence.
Okay.
One last question, Mr. From the workshop, do I recall that the savings of time would save us money almost possibly and hopefully equal to the addition of the money we're saving by not having to go for the PD&E.
So the faster we can get the project done, the lower the...
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself here. There was federal money that will not be available by doing this, but we could almost save that much in time. Was that the discussion?
So there was, we had been working with the federal government and the state for a $25 million grant, which will not be available, and our goal would be to make up that difference by building the project sooner than later, but we can't guarantee the full $25 million.
Hopefully some significant portion of that.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Motion, we got a second. Objections?
Public comment.
Any public comment? Thank you, sir. Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you all. Next item is item number 3. Roger, if you could walk us through that. Thank you.
Item number 3, the legislative agenda. Glenn?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, it's time to adopt your annual state legislative agenda. The priorities include lots of water quality projects. You've got some infrastructure funding requests and a whole host of policy issues, to include the expansion of Big Cypress Basin to include the portion of Lee County within the watershed. The local legislative delegation hearing has been scheduled for December 16, and traditionally, as part of this agenda item, you also designate the chair to represent the board at that meeting.
Very good. I'll move approval.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion and a second on the floor. Any public comment? Any objections? Motion carries. Thank you all.
Enjoy talking to the delegation. And we'll have our vice chairman, I guess, chair that zoning hearing that day. Be excited.
Thank you. Item number 4, County
Thank you,
Manager,
Mr.
please.
Chair. Commissioners asking you to approve reimbursements to the independent fire districts for COVID-19 response. Glenn, will you please present the item?
Yes, sir. This item does ask you to approve $3.5 million of pandemic-related expense reimbursements for the county's independent fire districts. We do note that the city fire departments are covered under your municipal subrecipient agreements, so they're already covered. The allocation of funds for each of these independent districts is calculated based on population estimates for the districts that are derived from both Census and Florida Bureau of Economic and Business Research data. And as part of this item, to just set the context for you, we'd like to give you an update on where we stand with the coronavirus relief funds that were directly allocated to the county, and that is the spreadsheet that you see in front of you there. On the individual assistance, just noting that we are in the final round of utility assistance right now. That will close on December 11th. Today, the final round of business assistance opened, and that will continue through this month. And just a couple of other items, child care support. You've enabled more than 1,000 scholarships to needy families already. We continue to sanitize 109 facilities for child care providers, so that's been a great program. And I would note that the county has now distributed over 8 million PPE items to the community through this program. Then on the bottom half there, you can see that public safety is the largest potential single expenditure from these funds, and that would include this $3.5 million that we're asking for on behalf of the fire districts. And with that, we can answer any questions that you have.
Questions?
Thank you, staff, for going through this. I mean, it's in the process for 9 months. You guys have done a great job with Lee Cares and all the funding and helping all the different agencies throughout the county. So thank you for your work on this. I'll move the item.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Public comment? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, and just you didn't ask the question, but you'll think of it after a while. Glenn, have we heard anything from the federal government on extending the time period beyond December?
We have not heard anything yet. We know that the continuing resolution that is funding federal operations right now expires December 11th, so negotiations are underway to put some additional funding in place to keep the government open, and we think that these discussions are ongoing as part of that process, but we have no indication whether or not an extension will happen.
What do you estimate right now, based on our current burn rate, that we might return then if say, for instance, it expires?
Well, if it expires December 30th, as is currently planned, we do, as you see by the spreadsheet, actually have all $134.5 million allocated. That doesn't necessarily mean that it all has to be spent. And what we would plan to do is come back to you at your final meeting on the 15th, try to wrap that up as best we can halfway through the month. But we could potentially utilize all of these funds, depending on what the board.
So it just has to be allocated by the 31st, not actually spent, or?
No, it does need to be spent, Commissioner. The point being, we have potential expenditures that could use the entire allotment. The board could choose to do something other than that. So we would need to get final direction from you at your meeting on the 15th in that regard.
That makes sense.
Just some conversation. I mean, when I, in my former capacity and president of Florida League of Mayors, I worked very closely with Senator Rubio's office to expand the PPE aspect for the business community. And if you all recall, that was expiring in June. Afforded the opportunity to get an extension. Certainly have a great working relationship with him. Wouldn't mind, if it's okay with the board, that I reach out to him to see the possibility of extending this beyond December 31st, so we actually spend the money and have a little bit more time frame to discuss the items. But just a thought, having a relationship and having that opportunity to expand the PPE from June to December, it's a phone call. I think that's worthy, as long as the board's okay with that.
At least support that, yeah. Anything we can do to extend it for our local residents and businesses would be great.
I'd gladly make the phone call and report back. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Item number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask you to approve the award of contract for construction and improvements of the Burnt Store Road South section of the Burnt Store project. Mr. Searcher, please present the item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Randy Searchy with DOT. This is item 5 is to award a low bid construction contract to Wright Construction for the construction of the southern and final section of Burnt Store Road. We estimated about $17.7 million job. This is going to include all the landscaping for all the 2 and 3, this final phase as well as streetlights for the last phase. Again, we estimated about $17.7 million, and it came in at 13.6. So I was a high bid by 4.1, which I'm not unhappy about. This also has a $2.9 million in TRIP funds, and we had a total of $10.6 million of state TRIP funds. That's Transportation Regional Incentive Program money, so it's a good project all the way around. We plan to have the pre-con on January 5th and get going soon thereafter.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Wonderful.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. County Manager, any other items?
No, sir. Thank you.
On to the public hearing.
Morning, Commissioners. Michael Jacob, Deputy County Attorney. We have your one public hearing today. This is to adopt a resolution for the collection of non-ad valorem special assessments. And there are certain MSBUs I need to read into the record just for your purposes. This will allow for the collection of assessments for Marina Coral Circle CIP, Sunset Cove CIP, Telegraph Creek CIP and O&M, Galt Island O&M, Whiskey Creek Channel Dredge CIP, and Bristol Road Paving and Water CIP.
I'm prepared to move the annual motion.
Thank you, sir.
Motion and second. Any public comment? Any objections? Motion carries. Thank you. There's no walk-ons. Commissioner appointments.
None at this end, thank you.
I have one reappointment, Mr. Chairman, of Dusty Gardner to the local planning agency.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objections? Motion carries. Do I go in order?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have several. So the first one is Karen Andrews for the conservation land acquisition. Stewart.
You want to do them one at a time? Okay.
Oh, you want to do them all? I'll read them all. I don't know what your preference
usually you
is.
just read them all.
Okay, I'll read them
One
all.
of us have to make the motion, then we'll
Okay.
second it for you.
Jareen Savo is for the Boca Grande Historic Preservation Board. Jermaine Chaston is for the Bike Pedestrian. Jean Brower is for the Bike Pedestrian. Eric Seavey is for the Bike Pedestrian. Roger Ward is for District B Health Planning. Jack Rowe is for the Cherry Estates Operation. Ronald Payne is also for the Cherry Hill Estates. Donna Schrachenbohr, local LPA, and then Ali Olivo is for the LPA.
I'll move approval of those.
Thank you. Motion is second. Any objections? Motion carries.
I got two reappointments, Ray Blacksmith of LPA and Cheryl Clutch of LPA. I'm sorry, Conservation Land Stewardship.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Motion is second. Any objections? Motion carries.
I've got three reappointments. Elizabeth Bernstein, Palmetto Point Special Improvement District, Kathleen Truax for the Palmetto Point Special Improvement District, and Stan Stouter for the Local Planning Agency.
Second.
I'll second it, yeah.
Second. Motion is second. Any objections? Motion carries. We have 4 public comment cards. Mohammed Jassin.
Commissioner appointment.
We did that, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Good morning, commissioners, and I welcome the new commissioners and the re-elected commissioners. We welcome you aboard. I just want to say that our coming year is coming up. The people in Lehigh would love to see you, all of you, out there, not in one specific spot, but at the council where you meet the local folks from each end of Lehigh. And we would appreciate if you can come out, take a look around, other than to the council and or to LAMSID or these groups. Come on out and take a look at what has been happening in Lehigh. I know that you know that we're unincorporated. I want to ask a favor of the staff, DOT, and I know we've had COVID for about 6, 7 months going on, but DOT, we're asking that you don't look at the residents to resurface roads in Lehigh. If you can expend like one day with one of your staff to come out and look at the roads in Lehigh rather than residents making that call, it really will be helpful because you have vehicles. Residents sometimes don't, they don't call in. Street lighting has been going great. I know we had a new staff member come on board, but I will let you know, our new staff people need to continue what we're doing. I'm on that advisory board, and I'll let you know that, look, so far, we've made several contacts. Our people work out there, members of the advisory board, and sometimes they don't get out till about 3:30. I know the staff members said that, look, I can only make it in the morning right now, but please, let your people make some additional time, like in the afternoon. They have a vehicle that they can come out with. And I wanted to call the county manager, but, I can come and say it here. But thank you all for coming on board. We're looking forward for your support. Thank you for coming on board also. All right? Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Next public comment is William Joe Schott Miller.
Good morning. I'd like to address also the homeless issue and the working poor. The tiny home concept is proven in a lot of places, but also you have all kinds of vacant houses that just sit, that are boarded in this community that could be put people to work, the homeless and others. There's all kinds of resources out there to find out if that belongs to the state now, back for taxes, or private owners, and use some of that money that comes in. So our community looks better, we put people to work, We have housing for them so they're not sleeping on park benches, and we treat people humanly. Like I said before, I used to hear the term, well, I'm going to land at the poorhouse. Well, where's the poorhouse? We need places. I understand that there's supposed to be some kind of tents going up for the homeless. I'd like to know about that. Some church people were telling me that around the Walmart area. It is getting cold, and we don't need to read names at the memorial for the Homeless Coalition. We need to hear, hey, nobody died, you know? So I'm hoping if you got any information on that before I leave, give it to me. And best thing, I hope that everybody works together and has that dream like Ebenezer Scrooge, that we all work together, not saying that everybody's Ebenezer Scrooge, but county and state come together, you know. The city, the county, and the state need to all meet in one room and see what's going on and look at the places and say, hey, let's do it. Now we solve this problem, not just coming a couple times a month and nothing's really being done. So I'm hoping that this end of the year brings a fruitful next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Heather Woody?
Hello. I'm here also to address the homelessness issue. I know I don't look like, I know I don't look like somebody who would be homeless, but for the grace of God, I'm not. I'm disabled, I have multiple sclerosis, and I have Social Security. I get $800 a month. That's it. I also have to pay copays. I also have to pay deductibles. I also have to pay for my durable medical equipment that keeps me living and able to function like a normal human being. The homelessness crisis in this community is absolutely horrible. I couldn't imagine if I had to try to access the resources that you guys provide. I'm getting emotional just talking about it because even, my associate Deborah, it took her how long to get housing for a disabled man who had long history of needing resources, asking for resources. And this was a veteran who has VA benefits. You guys, if I'm not mistaken, please clarify for me. You had almost $5 million in human services and food banks that needs to be spent by December 31st? Is that what it was?
Mr. Chair, we're happy to have the Human Service staff meet with you when you're finished, and we can answer all your questions for you.
Okay, but is that what just the previous comments were, that budget needs to be spent by the end of the year?
Go ahead.
If you can meet with staff,
it's just a simple yes or no. They just said that.
Ma'am, we're happy to have the staff meet with you to answer all your questions.
Okay. That being said, the resources you have right now only is available for the homeless, let me see, between 9 and noon and 1 and 5, Monday through Friday. Many of these people do not have access to cars. They do not have access to phones. They need to have internet, availability to apply for these services, an answering service possibly. Housing First has tons of resources for you that we could provide, that we could show you ways that other communities have dealt with the homeless issue, and that we can, give you a direction in which to go in this and to help you spend that money that's so desperately needed in this community. Like we're out there speaking with these people, with the people in the community, trying to get these services to them. And that's all I'm trying to say is I just hope I'm never homeless in your community.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Mercado will meet you in the back of chambers.
Thank you.
The last public comment is from Jasmine Miller. I did not. You spoke already.
Good morning. My name is Jasmine Miller, JD. It's good to see all of the lovely commissioners. The Lord God Jehovah appointed you and gave you a job to do the will of the people. And whenever you don't do the will of the people, we will take you out of your seats. Now, I want to say something about that nice lady who came to help us. I'd like to see a copy of the money from the COVID fund. That worksheet you had, we want a copy of it because we want to make sure that the homeless got their money from it. Up to this day, they haven't gotten anything from it. Food is not housing. And when you distribute the food, it doesn't go only to the homeless, it goes to everybody here. Poor and rich get the help from the food banks. Yes, I've seen that. Driving up in their Mercedes-Benz and taking food from the food banks. Okay? Now, I'm asking you now, I've always asked you before, to take some of the money and put it in a trust fund and ask the homeless themselves to tell you what they want the money to do, to use for. It's going to be housing, not a shelter. It's going to be a tiny house where they'll stay and where they can quarantine themselves. Speaking about that, oh, Mr. Pendergrass, I'm glad you're okay. You didn't die from the COVID virus. I almost did. When I got infected, I didn't have any place to quarantine myself. I had to stay outside. And when the homeless people in this town are infected, they have a place to quarantine. The money that was sent by the feds, by the president, was sent for them to quarantine. You're supposed to quarantine them. I want to speak to the city manager in privacy one day. And I want to ask you to invite the health department and somebody from the CDC. And I want you to seek their guidelines how you want to quarantine the homeless when they get infected. They're not being taken care of. The money was sent to take care of them. That's all I have to say. Take care of them. Or else Jehovah going to take you from your seat, and it will be soon.
Thank you. Deborah Hopkins.
I would like to talk to you today about upcoming evictions in Lee County and across the state of Florida. And I urge you to consider extending the ban on evictions in Lee County beyond the date that the federal government is going to, these protections are going to fall off, which is December 31st of this year. I'm going to talk to you in terms of cost-benefit analysis of this, and I'm going to provide you with a report which was done by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. I will provide you a copy of this. Millions of renter households, and I would say as well, mortgages, more people who have forbearance on mortgages right now, could be at risk of eviction this winter due to COVID-19 pandemic and its economic fallout. Without your intervention, this will disrupt their lives, cause harm to their economic, social, mental, and physical well-being. These evictions will also trigger a wave of unsustainable downstream costs that will further strain your budget and the public health and social services of this county. This report that I'm going to provide you highlights some of the public costs of eviction-related homelessness in the county and the United States, and these will occur if you do not provide adequate rental assistance and mortgage assistance and eviction protection. A significant share of evicted renters are likely to need services, including shelter and emergency medical care, that require extensive financial resources. And families who lose their homes are at higher risk of encountering the child welfare system and the juvenile delinquency systems, which also require significant resources, as you know. These costs are in addition to the well-documented personal costs of eviction on individuals and the cost to landlords in unpaid rent. The eviction moratorium in the Federal CARES Act which protected approximately 4 million renters, expired on July 25th. In September, the CDC issued an eviction moratorium that applies to most renters financially burdened by COVID, but it is set to expire at the end of this month, and it does not shield renters from the accumulation of back rent and late fees. Many state and local eviction moratoriums have expired or will expire soon. Meanwhile, approximately 3 in 10 rental assistance programs created or expanded in the response to COVID have already closed. So I encourage you to make a motion today to extend the moratorium within the county so that renters and mortgagees who are in forbearance do not have to suffer during a pandemic over the holidays and lose their homes.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comments? Seeing none. County Attorney, I believe we have one other item we need to address.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I have for your consideration a 37th extension of the state of local emergency, which we would respectfully request approval so that we can continue the county's response to the COVID-19 crisis.
Motion is second. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. County Attorney, County Manager, sorry.
Please don't ever call me in. No disrespect, Richard.
Imagine how I feel.
Charged by the hour, though.
Commissioners, we have just a few items for you that'll go very quickly. We're asking the chair to sign a letter asking Governor DeSantis to support Lee County's Rebuild Florida grant applications. Glenn, you want to go through it real quick?
Yes, sir. Thank you. These are about $15 million of projects that would be funded by community development block grants that have been made available in the wake of Hurricane Irma. You'll recall we secured a $7 million grant under these programs earlier for extensive work down in the San Carlos community. This would be similar type items: infrastructure repair, hurricane shelter improvements, hardening of the waste-to-energy facility, things like that. These projects have been reviewed by the Department of Economic Opportunity with county staff. The governor makes the final selection, so it's simply urging favorable consideration of those projects.
Hard to be against that.
Beg your pardon?
Motion?
Move approval. Second?
Motion, second.
There you go.
Any objections? Motion carries.
Sign it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would like to, with the weather cooling off, ask Mr. Moore to go through our cold weather plan for just a moment.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. Just a real quick update on homeless outreach. With the coming of cooler weather, obviously we're monitoring cold fronts moving through our area. Our Human Services Department, along with our emergency management team, have been watching the front that passed through last night. The National Weather Service has a forecast of about a 40-degree low. So because of that, we're going to activate the cold weather outreach plan. I'll just give you a little bit of detail in regards to what the activation of that plan entails. One, the coordinated entry phone line has been updated with cold weather announcement that promotes outreach locations, transportation services, sheltering, and supplies. We've shared the same information with all of our partners in the Homeless Coalition, and it's been posted to social media. In addition to that, we've identified overnight emergency sheltering capacity with our nonprofit partners, such as Triage, Salvation Army, and the Rescue Mission. So there are available beds overnight so that we can house them and keep them out of the cold. We have designated several outreach locations along Lee-Trans bus routes for the distribution of blankets, hand warmers, socks, hot coffee, and a one-day Lee-Tran pass if a homeless individual takes up the offer of sheltering overnight. Staff and volunteers will be stationed at these designated locations beginning about 5 p.m. this evening. We'll also conduct some targeted outreach throughout the day within known homeless encampments. In stride with this first cold front of the season, Human and Veteran Services is also kicking off its seasonal campaign for donations of cold weather supplies. So we're seeking donations such as blankets, jackets, gloves, socks, scarves, hats, and they may be dropped off at any of the 4 county-operated recreation centers during normal business hours. And we're also partnering with the Fort Myers Police Department. They'll accept donations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I'm sorry. Could you say where the 4 drop-off places are again slowly?
Yes, sir. They're at the 4 Parks and Recreation Community Centers, recreational centers. One is located in Estero, another in North Fort Myers, Veterans Park, and Waxahachie Recreation Center.
Thank or any City of Fort Myers PD?
The headquarters, yes, sir.
HQ alone?
Yes, sir.
And Mark, just for transparency reasons, all the different agencies that are working with homeless have blankets for people this week if needed, and there's also shelter opportunities for anybody that's in need for that, correct?
Absolutely. Sheltering opportunities have been identified. All of our partnering agencies are allocated some of these cold weather items. We obviously need more. We're bracing for a long season, so anything that we can get donated from our citizens would be greatly appreciated.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one final item. We'd like to leave you on a very positive note. You know, we have over the last couple of years we talked about how do we better convey to the public some of the good work that that Lee County does at your direction. Someone asked Ms. Brady to talk to you for just a moment about Lee Care's communication.
Good morning, Commissioners. As you are aware, or maybe not aware, we launched our social media platforms in March, approximately 1 week before our community started having impacts due to COVID-19. The team quickly transitioned to a communication strategy to inform and help protect our community. They coordinated and managed communications across multiple platforms to include our website, social media, electronic billboards, press conferences, direct mail, and email communications. We partnered with various local agencies such as the Florida Department of Health, United Way, the Lee County School District, and Lee Health, to name a few. These campaigns started with our Together We Can, to our current campaign of #FightTheFlu, and our ongoing campaign for the Lee Cares programs. Today we present to you our Lee Cares documentary, which chronicles the perspectives of the Lee County leadership, frontline team members, and recipients of the Lee Cares program. We have a 2-minute video to share with you now, and we will be launching our full 20-minute video later today on all of our social media channels. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who participated in the making of this video, the board for your support, the communication team, including our friends from Pushing the Envelope, and the entire Lee County organization for their hard work and their support of their community.
These are very unusual circumstances. People have needs that may have never had a need before.
The unemployment system in the state of Florida wasn't working very well. So you had people who were in danger of being evicted from their homes.
You had schools closed, so, daycares became essential for people, having a place for their children to go so that they could get to work and earn money to feed the family.
It was very nerve-wracking as to how we were going to pay bills. Money was dwindling out, so it was very, very urgent that we needed this program to help us get back to work.
It was just a very distraught feeling for me, because how can I provide care if I can't feel I can provide safe care?
There had to be some mechanism to help the people. Luckily, the federal government gave us the CARES Act fund, passed through the state.
They gave us this direct allocation of $134 million, and they said, use it to help the community. And so the commissioners knew we needed to create a program that would get this money in the hands of those that needed it as soon as possible.
We mobilized around 150 county employees from every single department across the organization.
What we really concentrated on was stabilizing these families, letting them get back to work, and allowing them to know that their children were in a safe environment.
We were able to put together a program that was up and running within 2 weeks of the time we received that $134 million.
It was very simple, very quick, and very easy. Like, far easier than all the other programs that were in place.
Even if it's not 100%, it's something to help you keep going, and that's all that matters, is we're all working together and we're going to get it. We're going to get through this.
The fact that the community cares and was able to keep us in our home, able to keep us in school, was awesome.
I really don't know what I would have done without the help of Lee Cares. That grant it brought so much relief and took away so much stress and put my business in a better place to make sure I did make it through this pandemic.
The unknown is really difficult, and so to be in an area where we know that our county cares about small business and is doing everything they can to help as many small businesses as possible survive this is really incredible.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioners, that's just a 2-minute snapshot of some of the great work that you all have done. I'd like to thank, the entire senior team, the management team throughout Lee County government, and all the employees who've been involved in these efforts. It's really been very gratifying and pretty impressive. You don't hear thank you all that often. You most often get the criticisms, and we all understand how that works. But you need to know that the community has told us loudly and clearly how much they have appreciated the Lee Cares program and the great work that you all have done. So thank you very much. Commission, this afternoon at 1:30. At 1:30, we will be workshopping the future of solid waste in Lee County.
Thank you. That will go for an adjournment. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.